Hey, everybody. It's Andy Bernstein, your host of the Legends of Sport podcast. And I am thrilled to be back in my studio, back in my office, bringing the last episode of our Restarting the Clock series to all of you. Can't believe that this is our 16th episode of the Restarting the Clock series. Seems like only yesterday that we started off with two LA Times journalists, Tanya Ganguly and Andrew Greif. And we are bookending it now with two LA Times journalists to talk about their experiences and my experience in the bubble. We were there for a long time. And my two guests, Brad Turner and Dan Woike, we have a lot to talk about. Our personal experiences, the experiences that we found that the players had to deal with, covering this unique season in the bubble was pretty unbelievable, and we all have our perspectives on that. The social justice shutdown that the NBA had for a few days, and what's in store for the Lakers and Clippers coming up for next season. So without further ado, let's get into it. The last episode of the Restarting the Clock series. And as always, I'll see you on the backside. So welcome to the final episode of the Restarting the Clock series. I'm Andy Bernstein, of course, and I have two of my great friends here, the great journalists from the LA Times, Brad Turner and Dan Woike. All three of us just returned from the bubble. We're still got some remnants of the bubble on us, I think.
Let's hope not. Jeez, I hope I've been deloused already.
Yeah, right. I don't know about you guys, but it's been taking me a little bit of time here to kind of decompress from the bubble experience. And I don't think anyone really understands that except for us who've been there, right?
I don't want to hijack your podcast, Andy. I mean, I do. I technically do. But I would say this, and I don't know BT's experiences. Like, it's weird. From going from, like, inside the bubble, like, being out back in the world. Yeah. It is a scary place out there. I feel like a baby bird out of the nest for the first time. Like, it is terrifying.
Yeah, it's so.
My situation was a little bit different because I was in tier 2, so I was, I guess, the bubble guy.
Mm-hmm.
I had my own place to go to. I had my own car, but what I wouldn't do, I would not go out very often because when I did, the people in Orlando, God bless their souls, they were out like it was 2010. Nothing was going on with the world. Yeah. You got people playing basketball. What virus? And I guess they looked at me the same way. Look at that guy. He's out here too.
Yeah, you weren't seeing a lot of masks in Orlando.
I kept mine everywhere I went.
Yeah. So let's set this up for a second. So we led off this Restarting the Clock series way back in July with Tanya Ganguly and Andrew Greif, right?
Yep.
And it was so long ago, I forgot. And Tanya and Andrew were the first two LA Times journalists in the bubble, right? One was in and one was kind of in. And then they left and you guys replaced them. So, there was a green zone, a yellow zone. The green zone was down like court level and was fully in the bubble, which, Dan, you were part of, right? Yep. And then Brad, you were in the yellow zone, which meant that you could sort of come and go as you please, but you still had to get tested. But you couldn't mingle in the green zone with the rest of us, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So first thing I got to ask you guys was, how long were each of you there? Because I'm not really sure how long each of you were in the bubble.
52 days.
How many? 52? Yeah, that's the same as me. Right.
I was there 30 days.
Right. But didn't you do 2 stints, Brad? Or didn't you come and go, or what?
No, happened? Dan did the 2 stints, but he was actually yellow and then green, right, Dan?
Yeah. So I did like 10 days in yellow before I did the last chunk in green. It was, I will say this, like being, and BT, you can speak to this too. I remember the first game I went to, Andy, was the game after I got into town the day Luka Doncic beat the Clippers.
Oh,
that was the day I got into town. That amazing, last second shot.
Mm-hmm.
The next day I went to games, and I'm sorry, that's incorrect. The next day I had to quarantine, and then the day after that I went to games, and I finally get to go see a game. It was a Clipper playoff game. The Clippers win by like 95 points. Like, it is a trouncing, right? Like, it is the game totally stinks.
Yeah.
And then I go back to my room, and I'm getting ready to go to the arena to catch like the first part of Bucks Magic the next day, and neither team came out of the locker room.
Yeah.
So that was like my first like 5 days in Orlando. I went to one game.
Yeah.
It was like a 55-point blowout. And then otherwise I was basically just in my room, which I guess was good quarantine practice because I did that for a week then after.
Yeah, that quarantine stuff was crazy, man. 7 days in the room. They're bringing meals to you 3 times a day. The only time you can leave is to get tested down the hall.
I walk 6 miles a day almost, Andy, in my room.
How is that possible?
Like a crazy person.
But the rooms were like 10 by 10. They were,
right.
It was 7 steps, I think, from my window to 6 or 7 steps from my window to the bathroom.
That's
crazy. And I would do that walk and I would turn around and do that walk again. And the way that I did is I'd listen. This is how I exercise.
Yeah.
I would listen to a podcast and so that'd be like an hour, right? And so
Legends of Sport.
It was Legends of Sport.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, of course.
Absolutely. So I would listen to your podcast. I would do the walk, right? And then, so when that's over, that'd be roughly like 3 miles or so.
Uh-huh.
I would try to do another mile, 20 minutes, give or take, listen to some music.
Yeah.
And then I would do the first half of whatever the early playoff game was. Is I would just try to walk during it and watch. Here's the craziest part of this. So, first of all, you're totally aware that you look insane doing it. And the way where my room was, BT, I had maybe one of the best sort of geographical rooms in the bubble, like right by like sort of the pickleball courts, by the dining area.
Uh-huh.
So everybody could walk by and see me pacing like a lunatic. And I didn't want to shut the blinds because I wanted the light. And so I'm doing these walks and I'm making myself dizzy because you would turn around so quickly.
Yeah.
It's like swimming laps in like a 2-stroke pool. It was insane.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I brought one of those exercise balls so they stretch my back out, one of those rubber band things, but I didn't get any exercise the whole time I was there. I mean, other than that. So BT, what your situation was, you were in a hotel that was kind of locked down, or what was
I was in a Marriott Vacation Property Hotel, which was near SeaWorld.
Right.
And the beauty of it is, as soon as you drove in, you saw these trees off in a distance.
Yeah.
And you would see a lagoon. So you felt like you were on a vacation.
Yeah.
There's a forest over there. And there are lagoons. So you really felt this really comfortable feeling. Yeah. And my place was kind of like a condo type.
Oh man, you like living the high life. Like,
when you
enter it was a penthouse beach.
Yeah.
Okay. Penthouse condo type thing. But I had a kitchen with a stove and a refrigerator and a microwave and a washer and dryer. And I had a countertop where I could have breakfast at. And a dining room table.
And a butler.
Well, I got rid of him the first day. He was too expensive. And I had a balcony in my bedroom. I had a jacuzzi in my bedroom. I never used it, unfortunately. Yeah. I had a big bathroom. And I actually would cook breakfast and lunch. I went to the grocery store, to Publix. Just got a few pub there. So I did that. And
180-degree difference of what we had going on.
Oh, man. So for me, it was really beautiful. I will say this, that one day I did walk around the grounds. Mm-hmm. I came back and I decided to go to the swimming pool, dust the tan, right? And I walked back to the lagoon and there's a sign that says, please don't feed the alligators. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
And I thought, don't worry about that. I ain't gonna feed the alligators.
I saw one. There was one in we saw like kind of a baby one night.
Did you?
In the lake, sort of the main lake. And, but no, like one of the things, it's funny. So when inside, like we had very limited sort of resource activities. One of the things we could do is we were able to play golf once a week and you'd go out on the course and you would see all this wildlife and you would see like these amazing deer. I had a wild turkey chase me, which was fun. Yeah. Yeah. Not like BT who was chasing the wild turkey after the bourbon. It's a little different. But like, but it's everywhere. It's like, beware snakes, beware alligators, beware snakes. And like, I kind of thought I wanted to see an alligator till I saw a little one. Yeah. And I was like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, there was signs all over the property. Beware, don't feed the wildlife. Beware of snakes and alligators. Oh my God. It's great that it's a family place,
Right.
So let me ask you something more specifically, Dan, because you were literally in the bubble.
Yeah.
It was to me, it was a confining experience. It really was. I felt very kind of claustrophobic at times, honestly. In fact, Mark Spears told a great story on the podcast. He said that, every day we would go on the bus and the bus would pass a McDonald's on the way to the arena. And he offered the driver $100 to go through the McDonald's drive-thru in the bus.
Oh, and it looked like a palace too, Andy. It was like not a normal McDonald's. This McDonald's looked like the nicest thing ever.
Oh my God. But Dan, what did you learn about yourself, you personally, like going through this experience?
It was, I'll say this, like personally for me, it was very difficult. Like I have a young son, I have a wife, and I knew that me being gone put a lot of stress on them.
Right.
Now that I have that out of the way, I can tell the truth. I think like professionally and personally, like generally speaking, in the bubble for me was a very, very positive experience. And I think one of the things that I learned about myself, or I knew it and probably forgot about it, was how much I like meeting people. And that's one of the things like the pandemic stole from us, is because we would see strangers, and is continuing to steal from us.
Right.
Because you see strangers around, people you don't know previously, and you look at them with suspicion and worry because you're afraid that they're sick. And inside the bubble, there were probably, I would say, maybe 10 to 15 people that were living there that I like either didn't know at all or only sort of knew. Who by the time I left, we'd exchange phone numbers or emails or become Facebook friends and all these different things. And we'd gotten to it, and it's a lot of what I actually really like about our job is that like you get to talk to people and you get to learn about them. One of the great experiences I had in there, Andy, was like getting to know the refs.
Yeah. A bunch of characters, those guys are.
They're hilarious. And it's one of those things like, BT, like I would see you at games over the years, like, when you would see your guys would walk through the tunnel, they'd say like, "What's up?" and stuff like that.
Right.
I had that with no officials in the league. Like the only time I'd ever talk to guys was when it was a pool report. And guess what? Like they don't want to talk to you after they blew a call. Like that's not when they want to talk. But like hanging out and, playing pickleball with guys like Scott Foster, Eric Lewis, Zach Zarba, Monty McCutcheon.
Yeah.
I mean, really like getting to know some of these guys, Kane Fitzgerald, Tony Brown. It was, to me, that was one of those things that I'm going to take with me out of the bubble. And it's funny because watching games in there, Andy, was totally different when you watch it through the eyes of like knowing the refs.
Yeah.
I don't mean to, I'm not going to curse. But I will say, one of the refs had like a great line. We were talking about their jobs at one point in time. He's like, essentially, I'm just a professional bleep taker. That's like all it is. It's just people just complain to me.
I like that.
You think they get yelled at home all the time? Like they just, it's just their life.
One of the greatest joys I had in the entire bubble was watching Scott Foster and Kane Fitzgerald argue about a call on the pickleball court with each other. It was like watching like
did they do one of these?
Yeah, it was like, and you got Kane Fitzgerald, this guy who gives out technicals and stuff like that, like and he's firing his pickleball paddle around and stuff like that, like total. It was honestly it was so great.
That's
I love that.
BT, in terms of your job, both you guys, but BT specifically, because you had less access to the team, the players, because you weren't in the green zone, and even in the green zone, there wasn't a lot of access either. But this had to make your job so much more difficult and different, right? Because you're used to being up close and personal with players and catching them on the way in, catching them on the way out, stuff like that. Right.
So it did, Andy, but I sort of used it like I would do during the summertime, doing free agency. It just meant making more phone calls. It meant texting more. It just meant doing things differently than I'd done before for a game setting. But I just knew if I had my phone and it was charged up, I would make those phone calls more often than I would do probably during the free agency period, during the summertime. So in that regards, I understood that because from the time it shut down and we started doing the Zooms, I understood then that most likely seeing these guys face to face was not going to happen. And I also knew I wasn't going to be in the green zone. I knew it would be Tanya and it would be Dan, because I didn't really want to go into the green zone. I didn't want to spend that much time away from home.
Yeah.
I had reservations about going, period. I'm glad I did. I'm very glad I did, because it was a great experience. It was fun, but not talking to guys face to face, it's challenging, but I understood that. I didn't complain. As long as I got some phone calls back, I felt pretty good about things.
I think it's funny, BT. I'm trying to remember if it was Michael Malone or Rick Carlisle. It was one of those two guys. So like one of the things I actually liked about the process, especially early, was that if you could plan it out, you could be on 15 different Zoom calls a day if you wanted, right? Like you could ask questions, you could write these stories and get voices from everybody, because you weren't traveling to, typically you would just get the, whoever you could get on the phone, and then like the two teams that are in front of you, right? Like this was, you had access to everybody. Yeah. So there was, I think I had asked for Carlisle. I think it might've been Michael Malone actually. I asked Michael Malone a bunch of questions kind of throughout this process and stuff. And I think it was game one or two of the conference semifinals. It's my first time like out of quarantine, and I go to, and they call on me through the thing. They say like Dan Woike, LA Times, and I watched Michael Malone like lean into the monitor a little bit, like to get ready to listen to it. And when I asked the question from there in person, he was like, "Oh, you're an actual physical being. Like I'm not just some voice out from the void, And but that's like how it went. I mean, I will say this. I think both credit to players and the league in general, like they made as good a use of sort of like the virtual press conference system, I think, as possible. Players were pretty engaged for the most part. What people couldn't see is that, and I didn't realize until I was there, is like they couldn't see you, right? Like, it was a one-way mirror. Like they were looking at themselves answering questions. All they could do was hear voices. And I think they did a good job making it seem sort of as normal as possible. And, I don't know what press is going to look like in the future. I hope it gets back to, the way that especially people like BT is so good at, which is like you just grab a dude on the way out and talk for 3-4 minutes and learn everything you really need to learn. I hope we get to that. And there was a little of that in the bubble, but like, I also think like credit to the players for like being as engaged as possible in a trying circumstance, because it was all pretty strange.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that was really bizarre is that, you go to a press conference, especially in the finals, and there were 12 people there, maybe 10, 12. Right. And all the chairs were socially distant. I mean, we're used to being at a finals, 100 media people. And I posted something on my Instagram that showed that scene, Dan, with you and like the 3 or 4 other 5 people that were there, and I think Eric Spoelstra was speaking, or coach, one of the coaches, somebody.
There was one Vogel press conference where I was the only physical person in the room. and like I took a video of it and I posted on Twitter like, you lose one game, and I told Vogel, I was like, everybody's off the bandwagon now, Frank.
It's hilarious. But the corresponding picture I put was Larry Bird in 1986, where there was so many media. This is 86. This is in 96 or 2006. There was so many media at Boston Garden that they had to pull Larry out of the locker room area, because they used to just put the player in front of the locker room door, and the media would just jam in there in that little Boston Garden hallway. They had to bring Larry on the court to do his media day interview, and there were hundreds of microphones in his face. It was just kind of jarring to see that, and every time I would take a picture, I was thinking I'm making so much noise in this like tiny little.
So that's a question I want to ask both of you guys. What was it like for you the first time you walked in there and saw that this is what basketball looked like in this playoff? So like, what was your reaction to it?
My first game I covered was the Clippers game 7 against Denver. So I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know where to walk. I'm just following signs. I get there 2 hours before the game starts. You do the Zooms with both coaches sitting from your seat, not being able to see them. And then, of course, we all know Doc, and they'll say, hey, Doc, we got Brad Turner here, your favorite guy. And my response was, well, Doc, I will be able to see you tonight.
Yeah.
He's like, what? I say, I'm here. I can see you. He's like, oh my God, I don't want that happening. So I have my eyes on you. But from that vantage point, it was just different. It took some getting used to. I mean, the seat itself wasn't so bad, but just the idea of looking down on the court and all I see are players, the seats, the signage behind them, and there are no fans.
Yeah.
There are not 18,000 fans at Staples Center to watch that game, whether it was Clippers, Lakers. Yeah. So that part really struck me as being odd, but you just sort of agree this is what it's going to be for you. This is what they're dealing with, and you just roll with it because that's just a part of it.
I think what it reminded me of, guys, was, do you remember in elementary school when you would have to make those dioramas in the shoebox?
Yeah.
And it would be you take a shoebox, you stand up on its side, and there'd be like a scene in it, and there'd be nothing behind it.
Yep.
That's what it kind of looked like. It was like this living, breathing basketball game that got dropped down in the center of something with absolutely nothing around it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
It was like a TV studio.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, because I watched, the play-in games in the first round. I was home. So then I walk in there. I literally felt like I was in, a video game. It felt like I was, I had just walked right in with the virtual fans and the whole thing. Plus, I'm not shooting on the court where I normally am. I'm off the court. That was an adjustment. Not being able to get near the players, do my behind-the-scenes stuff. That was an adjustment. A lot of adjustments going on.
Yeah.
Andrew,
Andy, I will tell you this, though. There was one unique thing, and I think to me was just a really great thing for me as a fan of basketball. Mm-hmm. I walked into a game between Boston and Miami, and I'm going to drop two names on you guys. I'll be a name dropper. And I see Pat Riley walking in because he was also in the yellow zone. And I say, Pat, I don't mean to bother you. Yeah. My name is Brad Turner. I cover the Lakers for the LA Times. I just spoke to Magic Johnson yesterday, the day before. He says, if I see you, just say hello to you. And Pat says, Magic called you back? Yes, he did. And he goes, he never calls me back. What's wrong with that guy? He's cracking these jokes about Magic, and I'm laughing because it's funny. He goes, well, I love that guy. Tell him to call me, please. I said, well, Pat, I will. I said, but I also had a text from Michael Thompson. He starts to tell a Michael Thompson story about the Lakers. Yeah. And I'm just glued to this because it's Pat Riley, this legend, telling me Lakers stories for 10 minutes. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, man, this is really, really good. This would not happen if we were at a game in Miami. I wouldn't see him, but in this small space, I get to see and talk to Pat Riley about the Lakers and his history with them, and he's cracking jokes about Magic Johnson. Come on, man.
The intimacy of all of this was really cool. I think, BT, you could hear some of it from where you were sitting, because I know when I was up there, you could hear some of it. The amount of trash talking, the benches yelling at players. I mean, there was a game, and I tweeted this when it happened. It was during the conference finals when Gary Harris is over in front of the Lakers bench with about 9 on the shot clock. Mm-hmm. And Jared Dudley and Markieff Morris start the shot clock countdown like they're in 7th grade, where they're doing 3, 2, 1, and Gary Harris shot it. Yeah. Right? He took the shot, and it was a bad shot. He missed it badly, and the Laker bench went nuts. And it was all of these little things that maybe they happen when you're being bombarded by T-shirt cannons and kiss cans and all of this stuff that this detracts your attention. Maybe this stuff is still happening. I know for me, I was way more locked into that stuff. It was great to watch sort of the interactions, the trash talking, the arguing. We saw LeBron and AD have a big argument during a game, right? And we watched AD pout, for a quarter, and we talked to him about it afterwards because we were able to see it, notice it, and all that stuff. And I think normally we would miss that stuff. And it was pure.
It was pretty funny about his response. Oh, you guys saw that?
Yeah, we saw everything. Yeah, we could see everything.
And then he goes, yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, we argued, okay? Yes, we did.
That's so funny. Well, before we got to the bubble, social justice issues were front and center, right, in the country, in our sport, and then amplified, 100 times by the Jacob Blake shooting, which caused the league, the players decided to shut it down. Right. Now, do you guys, and you touched on it earlier, Dan, but how did you guys feel about the fact that they decided to come back to play? Because there's, differing opinions as to whether they should have just ended it or come back to play, and what was the benefit of coming back to play from your points of view?
BT, go ahead.
I thought it was smart to come back to play because once you separate, you become individuals. You have less power as the individual. Right. And then what are you going to do if you go home? Are you going to go out and protest with some other people, the Black Lives Movement? There haven't been very many of those now. Are you going to just go home? But if you stand together as a group, there's more power in that group. And that was the thing that I kind of explained to a few guys that I knew that were just asking my opinion on what they should do and how they were going about doing it. I'm glad they stayed because it gave them a chance up until the very end, up until Sunday night when the Lakers won the championship. It gave all of them a chance to keep speaking out about social injustice, police brutality, all the things that were on their minds all the bubble long. They were able to do that. So for me, it was smart that they came back. I understood some guys wanted to leave, and they wanted to leave because of various reasons. They missed their families. They didn't want to be in a bubble. This is a real difficult situation to do. But if you really want to amplify your voice and to use all your platforms, do it as a group because there's no power in the group.
So, BT, you're right. That shutdown, obviously it was kind of triggered by the Jacob Blake shooting. But it wasn't solely specifically about that. I think in talking to people around there, that it was that was sort of the midpoint of this whole process. And I think people were just fried, mentally, physically, emotionally, just fried by the process. And this horrible thing happens. They all watch it. You hear Doc Rivers kind of pour his soul out there. And because I think when you're already a little more vulnerable, which I think anybody who lived in the bubble knows that at a certain point, you were just more emotionally vulnerable. It was weird. It was very strange mentally to be there. I think they just needed a break, and ultimately that's what it was. It was a 3-day sort of reset to refocus, and they leveraged it to get, ownership more involved with stuff, to develop kind of a bigger long-term plan for what they want their voice to be. I'll say this, I think two things about them returning to play. One, there's probably 4 or 5 guys maybe in the NBA who have a platform really whenever they want it, right? If LeBron James wants to talk about Breonna Taylor, he could do it whether he's in the bubble, he could do it on his Instagram, he could do it wherever. That voice is going to be amplified the same no matter what. Right. That's not true for Jeremy Grant. That's not true for Jamal Murray. And I think by staying, we got to hear it's not true for Danny Green, as a guy who is very vocal. So I think by staying, is the recognition too that the moment extended beyond the stars, right? This was going to be something that affected everybody individually. And then I think secondly too, watching players have to sort of carry that burden of being both a player and an activist. It was hard on guys. You could see it. You could tell that it was hard. It did divide attention. And it was a challenge. And I think, it certainly wasn't for everybody. And I think one of the interesting things watching kind of happen from just an observing point of view was kind of trying to watch the guys who wanted to sort of stay out of it. Yeah. And could they? And I think the moment was too big. It sort of demanded everybody. And I think ultimately the people that came out of there and came through that experience, I hope, learned a lot of stuff. I know I learned a lot of stuff, and you got to hear people share their experiences, and it was really powerful. I just think that the moment demanded a lot of the players. And I think by and large, they handled it really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. I mean, I learned a lot from it, quite honestly.
Sure.
I mean, like you, I got there at the same time, and I got out of quarantine and was supposed to do my first game, and it got shut down for 3 days. But through friends of mine that were there, Mark Spears, other people, I got introduced to movies, things I should be reading.
Sure.
I wanted to really learn what really is going on. I mean, obviously seeing the headlines and I understand, but I don't really understand, So that was a big benefit for me for being down there and being able to talk to people and being able to really learn more, And I think, like you said, Dan, coming out of it, the players are even more, there's a solidarity that maybe wouldn't have happened during, a normal season where they are together. I mean, they're physically together and, they had some great leadership. I mean, Chris Paul, amazing leader. I think Michelle Roberts was working behind the scenes there.
She was there, and the fact that she was there, I think, mattered a lot to those players because she lived it with them.
Yeah, and I think the league they were going to back them up whatever they decided. At least publicly, they were going to do that. So I think that was good too, right? So let's talk some basketball, right? So I don't know about you, but I was a little disappointed that I didn't get to see a Lakers-Clippers conference final. I think we all were, and I feel for the
Can I complain about that one time?
Yeah, go ahead.
My complaint would be that my entire goal for going down there for a month was because I figured Lakers-Clippers conference finals.
Yeah.
Therefore, one of them would be in the NBA finals.
Right.
Damn it, I was wrong.
You were half right, BT. You were half right, it turns out.
But here's the thing, Dan. Had I known the Clippers were going to collapse like they did, I would have stayed home for 2 weeks and only spent 2 weeks down there. Damn you, Clippers. You messed up my... No.
Yeah.
I kept thinking that, man, I'd be home right now.
Yeah.
Just 2 weeks, I'd be in Orlando. Instead,
they were up 3-1 in that series, and I would say an unnamed NBA official came up to me and was like, Clippers close it out tonight? And I was just like, I feel like I've seen too much. And it was funny, in some ways, BT, like this one was worse than the Houston. In a lot of ways it was worse because they were 15 to 20 points better than Denver virtually in each of those games. like that's, and look, credit to Denver. Like that team was like, they were tough as nails. They'd been together. They played really hard, really confidently, really free. The Clippers ultimately played like a team that wasn't all that interested in staying. And I think ultimately when we look kind of part of the story of the bubble, as we take, 5 years away, 10 years away from this, will just be like how much the Lakers liked each other and like bought into doing this together, how much the Heat liked each other and bought into doing this process together. And I think that mattered here more than it did anywhere else. Normally, like in the playoffs, like whatever. I mean, like you go see your people. Like if you're at home, whatever, maybe on the road you do a team dinner or something like that, but you're not always together. Like here, like these dudes were always together, especially before the families got there. They were always together. So if you're upset with your teammates because, they're going places they shouldn't go or doing stuff they shouldn't do, like there's no escaping that. And you have to kind of live in it. And I think the Clippers didn't handle it very well. I think that's obvious.
Yeah. Well, it would have been fun to see. Maybe we'll see it, and we'll actually see it, in Staples Center, which maybe will make it a little bit more fun to have a hallway series with actual LA.
With the real hallways, with the actual real hallways.
And Andrew, that's great for travel.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
You go from Playa Vista, Clippers facility, to El Segundo, Lakers facility, and then you go to a game at Staples. And then you go to a road game or a home game at Staples.
Yeah, but the only problem with that, BT, is you're not getting your Marriott points. So it's
Yeah, that's true, but I'm fine with that these days.
Yeah. So I got a question for you guys. So LeBron wins his 4th championship with his 3rd team, right? So, there's a lot of online chatter, a lot of discussion about him being, quote, one of the greatest Lakers ever.
Ooh.
Okay. What do we think about that? What does he have to do to earn that, or has he earned it already?
Man, wow. One of the greatest Lakers ever. I mean, we got to go back to George Mikan.
Yeah.
Before you were born, Dan. Me too.
Me too, probably.
And then you have Jerry West and Elgin Baylor.
Yeah.
Also before I was born.
Whatever, Dan. And then you have, how about this? Kareem and Magic when you're born,
Before I was born.
Oh, boy. And then you go from there, Kareem, Magic, James Worthy,
Cedric Ceballos.
You have, and then you go to Kobe and Shaq.
Yeah.
But you also have these great role players: Byron Scott, Michael Cooper, Robert Horry, Derek Fisher. So I don't know if LeBron has quite gotten there with Laker fans. I take my nephews, for examples. They love the Lakers. When LeBron James first got here 2 years ago, they were kind of like, I don't know if I like LeBron being here, but I'm a Laker fan. The Lakers won the championship. We're glad the Lakers won a title. We are now cool with LeBron. So my response is, what about Kobe and LeBron? Oh, man, get out of here, man. Kobe's the man. Right. He's the guy.
Yeah.
So I'll say yes, he is one of the greatest, but he is not in easily the top 5, top 6, not yet.
Okay.
That's the weird thing about LeBron in this, right? Is that they're for a huge chunk of the basketball watching population, like he's their favorite team. Like they go where LeBron goes. Like I remember Derwin James, the Chargers safety. Yeah. I asked him, I'm like, who's your favorite team? And he said, LeBron James. And I was like, what do you mean? That's like, and he's like, wherever LeBron goes, that's where I'm at. And so like, it's weird. LeBron almost like transcends the colors that he wears, where it's like, I don't think there's any question. Like he's either the first or second, maybe third greatest player of all time, depending on if we really want to dilute that argument. I think he's second. But is he
behind who, Dan?
Artist Gilmore, number 1. Yeah. No, but I think that he's a better all-time great NBA player than he doesn't really feel like a Laker in the same way that he doesn't really feel like a member of the Miami Heat, almost in the same way that he doesn't really feel like a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers, which is where he spent most of his time. Like he's just sort of the league and of the world, which is, I think, what made living here, to totally turn this conversation, it's what made watching the reaction to Kobe Bryant's death here so interesting and fascinating to watch the way that Los Angeles mourned, because despite being a global icon player, he was ultimately Los Angeles' son, right? He was very much of this city and of its fans in a way that I don't even think Michael Jordan is in Chicago. Like Michael Jordan belonged to the world. I think LeBron James belongs totally to the world. Kobe was a Laker. Yeah. You know what I mean? Some of those other guys, you mentioned, Jerry West is a Laker. Yeah. Elgin is a Laker. Kareem even is a Laker.
Magic is a Laker.
Magic is the Laker.
Right.
And LeBron to me is I don't know. He's just sort of he's closer to being the logo of the league than he is to being of any particular team.
So it's not really that important then. I mean, it's really
none of this is. No, I mean,
no. I mean, people get so caught up in it, and
it's fun though. It is fun.
It is fun.
Andrew, what I think? I told my friends this: Laker fans love LOVE, love Kobe, Shaq, Jerry West, Magic. Yeah. Laker fans now love LO, LeBron. The VE ain't there yet. It might get there, but he's just an LO. And eventually he hopes to get to the LOVE.
And does that mean he's got to win 2 more championships at least to get the other 2 letters, or what?
It's a good question.
The dude is 37 years old.
Yes.
Well, it's pretty amazing the talent that he has, and the how he takes care of his body is just
the drive. The drive this year was unbelievable.
Drive, yeah, and and I liked also the fact how openly he talked about how hard it was, that it was the most challenging, hardest thing he ever had to do as a professional. And it was, I don't think there's any way around it. I felt bad that people were, putting Paul George down, that he actually came out and talked about his mental challenges there, and people made fun of that, and even more so after they got eliminated, and kind of put some of that on his shoulders.
So I wrote a story this week, Andy, about the mental health thing, and some of the responses to it were sort of like tell it to the Army wives, right? Or tell it to people I was in the Navy and I spent 9 months on a ship, and I know about isolation. Mm-hmm. And look, and that stuff's all true. but like it's all relative too, right? Like no one would ever say, you know, Jacques Peterson struggles against left-handed pitching, but he doesn't really know struggle because he has a roof over his head. Like no one would ever say that. Like it's base level. Like we're talking about people in the NBA by and large who are pampered like in ways in ways that, you know, a level of comfort that most of us will never even dream of. Yeah. So you take all of those people, you make life much less comfortable. You give them a lot of rules that they're not used to following, right? Telling them who they can and can't see. You take away their entire support systems by and large, right? Like, and say you can't see your family, you can't do this stuff, you can't pet your dog, you can't have any of this stuff. You're going to just have to FaceTime your way through these relationships. You completely upend people's lives. You take away their favorite restaurants, you take away the places they eat, their like the food that they normally consume, and all this stuff. And like, yeah, it's going to mess with you. And it messed with people there for sure. And I think, you know, what Paul George talked about, and it's totally true, is, and Danny Green said this as well. I remember that first night of the strike or the shutdown or whatever, I was like, I'd written for A1 that day, which BT knows is like, that's a stressful experience. And I wanted to unplug and I couldn't.
Yeah.
I like normally the ways that I unplug were all back in California. And so I just sat in the discomfort. I got a horrible night's sleep, constantly on my phone. And you know, look, I didn't go 2 for 10 and shoot a 3 off the side of the backboard. If I'd done that, it would have been even worse. And I think that's what happened to those guys, is they were kind of forced to sort of sit in their failure because there was nowhere to escape. There were very few escapes there.
Yeah, that's a great point. It really is. So guys, to wrap all this up and this great series we've had, the 16 weeks of restarting the clock, not just in the NBA, but the WNBA as well. How do you guys see the league moving forward here? When do you see the next season? I mean, none of us really know anything. And all we've heard is just rumors and Adam Silver talking a little bit about, you know, February-ish or something. What's your gut feeling, guys?
Well, I'll say this. I don't care when they start. I just want them to end by August so I can go to Paris, France.
It's all about
to be clear again, not Paris, Texas, not Paris, Illinois, but Paris, France.
Right. Yes, Dan, Paris, France. That's all I care about. End by middle of August, because I am missing going to Paris this year for the first time since 2007, I might add. So they can start on August the 1st.
And on August the 20th. Question. This is what he comes with.
I'm cool.
And they say reporters don't have their biases. Come on.
That's all I care about.
It's funny though. You're actually like not. You're sort of on base though with like what they care about too, because it's like they do care about when they finish. Yeah. Because like, look, I mean, they know what the ratings were, and look, ratings are down for a lot of reasons, a bunch of sports, but like going up against things like Sunday Night Football is not the position that the NBA wants to be in when they're playing the NBA Finals. They want to be done sooner than that, and they also, I think, want to like try to get a little bit back towards their normal schedule. So ending in August or at the latest, very early September, I think is super important. Going this deep into October is a problem. You know, my guess is if I had to bet, I would say, I mean, definitely after MLK Day. I don't think they'll be on the court by then. I think it'll be after that. But probably before Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a good, safe time to project without really knowing.
Yeah.
And it may start in places like California, where the Lakers, Clippers, Sacramento, and Golden State don't have fans. But the Miami Heat and Orlando, they will have fans. And Houston and San Antonio and Dallas, those states are operating differently than California is. Right. So maybe the Lakers play and they don't really have their ceremony for their rings until they can get some fans in there.
Well, more to be revealed. Hopefully we'll hear something, you know, next maybe month or so we can prepare for it. But to my fellow...
2 weeks. We'll know more within the next 2 weeks.
Think so? Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. But to my fellow Bubble brothers, I got to thank you guys for taking the time to come on to sort of bookend this whole Restarting the Clock series. I really appreciate it. It's been super fun for me. It's been an experience. I think I'll never have again. Doing this podcast out of my hotel room in the beautiful Coronado Springs Hotel was certainly a challenge, and it was interesting.
When are you going back to the casitas, Andy? When's the reunion? Are you going to go back to that?
I don't think I will ever go to any place with the name Casitas in it for the rest of my life. But listen, guys, thanks so much. You guys are great. And, we have an NBA champion here in LA. We got another team that's, waiting in the wings with a new coach, T. Lue, great new hire by the Clippers. So, all things are looking great for us going into the next season. So thanks, fellas, for being part of this last episode of this particular block. We're going to continue with the Legends of Sport podcast after a couple of weeks. And, hopefully we'll reconnect at some point before next season.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks, guys. Well, huge thanks to Brad and to Dan for being guests today, being the last guests on our last Restarting the Clock episode. Hard to believe we've gone through 16 episodes throughout the NBA and WNBA restarts. Was a challenge at times, but I got to tell you, it was a lot of fun for me to do. Had some great guests, some great perspectives, and I'm really happy to end it with two great friends, two great journalists who were in the bubble like me, and we could share our perspectives with you guys. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. Folks, keep coming back to the Legends of Sport podcast. We're going to start back up right again next week with another great guest, and then every other week after that. And keep checking our social media for the guests that are coming up. So keep following us on Instagram at Legends of Sport, our Twitter, Legends_of_Sport, our blog, legendsofsport.blog, and of course, our YouTube and TikTok channels, Legends of Sport. And you can find my photography, as always, at ADB Photo Inc. Thanks again to my great producer and researcher, Veronica, not only for this great episode that we just had, but for all the episodes throughout the Restarting the Clock series while I was in the bubble. So thanks, you guys. Keep coming back. And as always, wear your mask. See you next time.